Welcome everyone, and thanks for taking the time to come to this session today. My name's Eleanor Hayes from BirthSang, and we've got lots to cover in the short amount of time we have today. By the end of this session, you will be more empowered to make informed choices and decisions in your pregnancy, labour and birth. You'll feel confident that you understand the ABCs of labour and what there is to learn. And you'll have experienced how learning more stuff actually helps you feel differently about birth. And my aim is to give you everything you need to help you feel 100% confident and completely ready for birth. So to start, I just want to ask you, do you want to feel 100% confident and ready for birth? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready do you feel right now? Where 1 is not ready at all and 10 is 100%. So have a little think about that. Don't overthink it, just whatever number pops into your head. And we'll come back to that at the end and just see the differences that you feel. So let's have a look at the brain model, which is a series of questions that we ask in order to help us to create the right kind of choices and decisions in labour and birth, and making sure that we are as informed as possible. So let's begin with B. B stands for benefits. What are the benefits to this choice? And this is a really important question to start with, because if you don't understand the benefits of what you're choosing, then that's really not a good place to be. So it's really important to ensure that we understand why we are making this choice in the first place. So this is a really important one to start with. And I'd like to use an example related to birth to put a bit of context to this. So let's use the example of an induction of labour for going past your due date. Now, this is quite a common intervention. In the UK, around 30% of people end up having an induction of labour. So it's highly likely that you will at least have a conversation about it and perhaps make that choice yourself. So it seems like a good example to use. So what are the benefits of having an induction of labour? Well, the benefits are that it artificially starts and manages your labour when it hasn't yet started spontaneously. So that's the key benefit to an induction of labour. So then we come to R, which stands for risks. What are the risks to this choice? And risks are about the things that are directly related to that choice. And again, this is the B and the R are the kind of standard pros and cons of any decision-making process. So nothing too groundbreaking here, but it's still nevertheless really important questions to ask. So what are the risks to this choice? Really give you much more detail about what's going on with what you're choosing and what your decision is. And in the example of an induction of labour, a drug is administered to you in order to get your labour started, and that drug has effects on the mother and can have an effect on the baby. Some of those effects we want, i.e. it triggers contractions, and some of them are ones that we don't particularly want. So there's always risks with any drug. So with using the brain for any drugs that you're taking is a really, really important thing to do. So then we come to A, which stands for alternatives. What are the alternatives to this choice? Is there anything else that we can do? Is there any other options available to us? Now, quite often in labour and birth, we are not presented with a menu, and our midwife won't say, well, we think that we would like to do X, Y, Z or A, B, C. In fact, what tends to happen is we're guided through a particular pathway that they feel is the best one for us. And it may well be the best one for us, according to them, but we may have other ideas. So it's always useful to understand whether there's anything else available to you at this point. So this is a really useful question for just getting more information and more context about the decision that you're making. And in the example of an induction of labour, the alternative to having an induction is to do what we call expectant management. Now, this is where you would go into the hospital every day for monitoring both you and the baby and make sure that everything is absolutely fine. And this is a completely valid alternative, but one that is rarely presented to you in the first instance when an induction of labour is on the cards. So then we come to I, which stands for implications. What are the implications to this choice? And whilst this sounds a bit like risks, really the implications is a bit more of a broader picture, and it's a way of, again, surfacing more information, not so much about the choice itself, but what the knock-on effect of that choice is going to have. So what might be the results later on down the line, in a day, in a week, or whatever. And this, again, is a really useful question to ask. As sometimes things don't have necessarily a risk attached to them, but nevertheless mean that something else is much more likely to happen. So let's put that into context. In the example of an induction of labour, an implication is that your contractions will come on quite fast, quite intensive, and many people report that it's more painful than they might have expected. And so that means that you're more likely to choose a stronger pain relief choice at an earlier point in your labour than you might have done. And that choice will then have its own set of benefits, risks, alternatives, implications, etc. So it's about seeing the bigger picture here and what might be more likely a bit further down the line. Then finally, we come to N, which stands for nothing. What if I do nothing? What if I wait an hour, a day, a week? And again, this question is a really good way of broadening the information to help you make that decision and really understanding a bit more about how urgent that decision is. And when we understand whether it's okay to wait a little while or not, that really helps us to kind of see where that decision-making process should come in our priorities. Sometimes just waiting means that the whole situation is completely changed and that decision is no longer relevant. Sometimes there's just not waiting is just not an option. So it's really useful to just understand that sense of urgency. And in the example of an induction of labour, nothing is really a similar kind of response to the alternative of expectant management, which is, basically just monitoring the situation and waiting. And that is, again, a really useful decision because sometimes a day later, you may find that you've gone into labour naturally. So the whole decision around making an induction is completely sidestepped. And this is a really, really useful way to just get that sense of urgency. So this whole acronym, BRAIN, benefits, risks, alternatives, implications, nothing, give you a really useful set of questions to use throughout your pregnancy and labour and birth to make sure you fully understand all the choices and decisions that are available to you and that you make an informed one. So we can use our brain not only for decision-making process, but also to research and create your birth preferences. And so this is something you can do much earlier in your pregnancy, well before you're actually in labour. And you can use it and apply it to all of the 5 pain relief choices that are available to you during labour, and also in the 13 interventions that can happen during labour and immediately afterwards. And in fact, I love this acronym so much that I have used it to write a book all about pain relief choices and interventions to help you make as informed decision as possible. And my book's called Helping Birth, Your Guide to Pain Relief Choices and Interventions in Labour and Childbirth with Real Stories. And it has, as it says, real stories in there to give you a bit of context and an idea of what actually it's really like to experience that intervention or pain relief. And this book's available on Amazon if you're interested. So let's come back and apply this acronym, this BRAIN acronym, to our example of the argy-bargy and see if it's changed our decision-making process. let's start with B. So the benefits of having an argy-bargy is that it will stop you feeling hungry, it tastes like curry, and it will leave you feeling happy inside. The risks of an argy-bargy are that it contains nuts and in 10% of cases can give you a bad headache. The alternatives to an argy-bargy are chocolate cake, chicken and rice, or an ujima flip. The implications of an argy-bargy are that dinner is actually in an hour, so you probably won't feel hungry for dinner then, and it is your favourite meal. If you do nothing, you'll still be hungry, but dinner is soon, and so the feeling might pass. So given this extra information we now know about the argy-bargy, would you like an argy-bargy? Whether your answer is the same or different, let me ask you this. How different was your decision-making process? And how different did you feel about making that decision? So now having that brain framework, that model for asking questions to make the right choices and decisions, you now know how to make sure that all of your choices and decisions are as informed as possible. And now you know how to make informed decisions. Aren't you feeling a bit more ready for birth? So let's now move on to the second mistake that parents-to-be often make in their birth preparation. And this is that you just don't know what you need to learn because you don't know what you don't know. So being pregnant is overwhelming enough, and well, physically and emotionally. And so doing research about what you need to learn is at best exhausting and at worst terrifying. And it's not your fault because you've never given birth before. So how do you know what you need to know? Do you know, if I had £1 for every time somebody said to me, oh, I wish I'd found your course before I had my baby, as if my birth would have been so different if I had all those tools and knowledge at my fingertips. Well, do you know, if I would basically be able to retire to the Bahamas if I had £1 for every time someone said that. But lucky for you, you found me in time. So I want to share with you a brilliant and simple way to start getting to grips with what you need to learn to feel 100% confident and completely ready for birth. So let's look at the ABCDEs of labour. First of all, we have A, which stands for anatomy and physiology. Now, anatomy is the different parts of the body, and physiology is the way that they work together. So, for example, how the body is working during labour. And also we have to consider how the baby is moving as well, because they're an integral part of the process. And for me, anatomy and physiology is an absolute foundation of all of your knowledge because everything will relate back to that and it underpins all of the other things that you learn. So I believe that every bit of your antenatal journey should always start with what's going on in the body. Then we come to B, which stands for benefit the body. And this is all about understanding what we can do to help the body work as best as it can during labour and all the things we can do to help it, but also understanding the things that can make labour more difficult and the things that can hinder it. And so we can avoid those. So those two things are really important and they bear very, very close relation to the anatomy and physiology. Then we come to C, which stands for cope with contractions. And this is all about understanding how to get through the sensations of labour and all of the different tools and techniques and methods that you can learn to help you cope with what's going on through your labour and get through it one contraction at a time. And I like to think of there being a triangle of focus because all of the different tools and techniques and methods can sit on 3 points of the triangle and they fall into 3 broad categories. And when you understand those 3 broad principles, it means that you can come up with your own way of coping with contractions that's unique to you, because I don't believe that one method fits every single person. But when you understand the principles behind it, then you're able to use them to build something that's going to work for you absolutely uniquely. Then we come to D, which stands for don't forget the birth partner. And it's really important to ensure that your birth partner feels really included in what's going on, because they're not a spare part, and their job is a lot more than just being a cheerleader and sitting in the corner going, yeah, come on, you can do it. So it's really important for them to understand the physical impact that they have on the mother during labour, and also to understand practical tools, physical and emotional ones, in order to learn how to be the most awesome and supportive birth partner possible. Then we come to E, which stands for enhance your emotions. And this is where the mindset part comes into it, and understanding that how your emotions can actually have an effect on your labour, on the physiology of your labour. And it's about learning how we can feel really genuinely confident, not just like empty positivity, but positivity backed up by loads and loads of tools. And what's really interesting is when you learn about the anatomy and physiology and the foundations of labour and what's going on in the body, and how you can help it, how you can benefit the body, and what not to do to hinder it. And when you layer on all the different methods of coping, and you understand not only how to do those methods, but why they help, because of the effect that they have on the physiology of labour and how they benefit the body in labour. And then when your birth partner feels really confident about what they can do to be the most supportive and awesome birth partner possible, basically when you have learned all of this stuff in the A, B, C and D of labour, what happens is that the E emerges, and in fact you find that you start to feel really different. You start to feel really, really positive, and all of that knowledge helps you feel more calm, more relaxed, more empowered, more in control, more knowledgeable, more at ease and confident. Basically all of the words that describe what it is like to feel 100% completely ready for birth. So now we have sidestepped completely this mistake of not knowing what you need to know, because now you know that when you follow and learn the labour ABCDEs, you'll have a comprehensive knowledge base and skill base in order to feel really ready. So knowing this, are you starting to feel a bit more ready for birth? Felix said to me back in the summer about my classes. These are excellent classes. They're really informative and thorough without overwhelming you with information, and really great follow-up materials and supplementary content, and some really eye-opening and informative video examples. So Felix, being a birth partner, actually really found the course incredibly useful and beneficial. So I know I'm getting that bit right. So the third mistake that parents-to-be make is that many people are doing the single worst possible thing in labour that's making their labour and birth harder, longer and more painful. And sadly, TV and movies are quite possibly the worst antenatal education that you can get, and we don't learn about this stuff in school. And the TV is widely spreading so much misinformation about what we should be doing in labour and birth, because they give you what they think is dramatic and exciting, but not actually factually correct. And most people think that your labour starts by waters breaking everywhere, immediately followed by the onset of agonising contractions, and then you go straight to hospital, climb into bed, lay down with your legs up and scream the house down until the midwife tells you it's time to push, and then the baby is born. No, no, no. This is completely wrong on so many levels I can't even begin to start. And I don't have time to break that down as to why it's so wrong, but let's focus on the most important thing. We've just got short time together, so let's be really focused. Do you know the single worst thing a woman can do in labour and birth? Have a think, see whether you know what that might be. In fact, I'll tell you, the single worst thing that a woman can do in labour is to lie on your back during labour and birth. And so let's start to deal with this by diving into a little demonstration of what I'm talking about, and also giving us an example of parts of the A, the anatomy and physiology, and the B, the benefit the body from our labour ABCDEs. So let's start with the A and look at the anatomy and physiology. So what we're going to do is we're going to examine how the baby moves down through the pelvis in labour and birth. And then we can start to think about what we can do to help that. So first of all, we're going to meet baby Nelly here. And also we're going to be looking at this pelvis as well. So in order to do this, I'm going to just step back, and so we've got a bit more space for you to be able to see what is going on here. So unless you have a cesarean, every baby is going to have to move down through the bones of the pelvis, and it's got to come through this hole during the process of labour. So let's have a look quickly how that's going to work. So first of all, in an ideal situation, the baby will be entering the pelvis with its head down and facing towards your right hand side at the start of labour. Now there are variations in the starting position, but for the purposes of this demonstration, let's go with what's most likely and also the optimal position for the baby to be in. So then, as your labour begins, quite slowly and gently, you will feel that your contractions begin and they start to intensify, they start to get longer and they start to get more frequent. And during this time, the baby starts to turn, and it turns in a clockwise direction. Quite slowly, it turns. And in the meantime, your labour is progressing. You're going from the early parts of labour into the active and more established labour, and you may get to hospital at this point, and all the time the baby is turning. And in another part of your anatomy, the cervix, which is the opening of the womb, the uterus, the cervix is thinning and effacing. It's opening around the baby's head to that magic number of dilation. Do you know what that is? And then all the time the baby is turning until we get to a point where two things happen. So the first is that the baby has turned a quarter of a circle. It's turned 90 degrees from facing sideways to facing towards the back in the pelvis. And also the cervix has opened to its full extent, 10 centimeters of dilation, which is actually, again, not particularly physically inaccurate, but I don't have time to get into that right now. So when those two things happen, the baby's head will drop right down into the bottom of the pelvis and start to press on the pelvic floor muscles, which are being represented by my hand here. And this triggers the body to go into the next stage of labour, the part where the body will spontaneously push the baby out. Some people refer to it as the pushing stage, but actually the body is spontaneously expelling the baby. So then at this point, the baby's head has cleared the bottom of the pelvis, but it's important to understand the head is not yet visible yet. So it's cleared the bones, but it's still got to travel down through the vagina, through the birth canal, and that's what happens during that second stage of labour. So the baby travels down the vagina, it meets the vulva, the perineum, that parts around the baby's head as the baby's head crowns, and then the baby's head is born facing backwards. Then very quickly, certainly within the next few moments, probably within the next contraction, the baby will then turn back through 90 degrees very quickly back to its starting position, and then the shoulders will be born and the rest of the body will come quite quickly, and you get to meet your baby. It's a go. So this process is designed to be successful, and the twisting and turning of the baby inside of the pelvis helps the baby to move down through the bone structure and be born. So I think this is a fantastic process. I think it's really interesting to see how that works. So, I hope that that's been a useful bit of information for you. But of course, that's not going to be completely useful in its own right. We need to be able to turn this into useful knowledge. And in order for this to be useful for you, we need to understand more about how we can benefit this process and help the baby move down the process, down through the pelvis. So the single thing that we can do that will help the baby move down through the pelvis is for the mother to be in an upright position throughout labour and birth. And by upright, I basically mean any position that is not lying on your back. So let's have a look at why this is so important by seeing another little demonstration. So I'm going to use this ball to help us understand why being upright is so beneficial to help the baby as it moves down the pelvis in labour. So this ball is roughly analogous to the size of the baby's head, and it's just a bit easier to show you what that looks like than showing you with the doll. So in order to do this, we're going to have a look first of all at what's going on when we're lying down, and then how different that is when we stand up. So this is what the mother position will be in when she's lying down on her back. So when she's in this position, her pelvis is in this position here. So we've got the top of the pelvis here and the bottom of the pelvis here. And what we saw just now is that the baby will start in the pelvis like this. It will rotate through 90 degrees like this, and then we'll come down through the pelvis like that. So that's basically what's going to be happening with the baby. So now let's take this ball and see how it's going to compare with the baby. So the ball is going to come into the pelvis. So the head is coming into the pelvis in the first part of labour. And immediately we can see I don't need to hold on to it. In fact, if I turn the pelvis around here, we can see that these bones here are holding the ball in place. And in fact, you can just see underneath here, the tip of the tailbone also holding it in place. So it's holding the bottom of the pelvis to its smallest capacity and holding it with as small as hole as possible. So my hand is going to represent contractions here. So as our body goes into labour, and at this point, the baby is trying to turn and move down slightly. And, you know, turning is really difficult. And we can see clearly that the bones of the pelvis here are creating resistance, are holding it in place and making it really difficult to the baby to move further down. And then once the baby's got into the position where it's facing the back and needs to start moving down through to the bottom of the pelvis to press on the pelvic floor muscles, again, the bones of the pelvis are creating resistance and making it harder and harder until eventually the head will be clear and then the baby will be clear to then come out through the rest of the tissue. But then the rest of the bones have got to navigate that tiny hole through the pelvis. So we can see clearly that when we're in a lying down position, it's being made as hard for us as possible. So let's come back up and see what happens when we get upright. So when we're lying down, the pelvis is in this position. And as soon as we get in an upright position, then something really different starts to happen with the bones of the sacrum here. And the sacrum would naturally be positioned like this. And when we're lying down, it's pushed in. So as soon as we get up, the sacrum can open back to its default position, and the tailbone as well can move out of the way. And in fact, these bones here and here, these are the sitting bones, they can also move further apart. It's a small movement, but I think you can see them moving. And so we find that this space at the bottom of the pelvis can open to its fullest capacity. And in fact, depending on which position you get into, we can create up to 33% more space in the pelvis in order to help create space for the baby to move down through the pelvis. And you can see really clearly that there's no bones at all touching it at the back. There's loads more capacity and loads more space for the head to be able to turn and then also to come down through in the later stages of labour. So now you know how to avoid the biggest mistake of all and to help your baby move down through the pelvis as best it can. And now you know this. Are you starting to feel even more ready for birth? I hope so. So in this short time we have spent together, do you feel that you know exactly how to use your brain to make informed choices? Do you know exactly what you need to learn in order to be able to navigate what you need to learn? And do you also know the single best thing that you can do in labour to help your baby move down through the pelvis? And also, let me ask you, has this session been a valuable use of your time? Can you see how learning all this stuff, the A, the B, the C, the D of the labour ABCDs, helps you feel more ready for birth, the E? And at the start of this session, I asked you on a scale of 1 to 10, how ready for birth do you feel? Well, let me ask you again, how many points up the scale have you come? Are you excited now to go forward and do more, to feel 100% confident and completely ready for birth? Well, I run monthly live online courses called Get Ready for Birth, and I'd love to tell you a little bit more about that now. So Get Ready for Birth is my 4-week live online course. It's done via Zoom, and you can see me there in the picture there. This is my May group, and the course covers 4 weeks. In the first week, we cover the Aid and the Bs. So we look at the anatomy and physiology. We look at the pelvis and the uterus. And we also look at how we can benefit the body and those two parts of the body. Then in the second week, we cover an A and a B and a C. So we continue with the anatomy and physiology and look at the hormones and all the ways we can benefit the hormones, but actually a bigger overview of all of the 31 different ways that we can benefit the body during labour and birth. Then we look at the good birth environment and the things that we can do to create the best environment for labour, and also start to look at C's and understanding what labour is going to be like from an experiential point of view, what to expect in terms of what it's going to feel like, how long it's going to last, and that sort of thing. Then in the third week, we exclusively look at C's. We're going over all of the different ways we can cope with contractions. We look in detail at the labour triangle of focus, and we practice in the session. So it's a very practical workshop. We have our birth balls pumped up, and even though it's over Zoom, we will physically do the massage techniques, and we will do some breathing techniques, and we practice all of those things because it's not good enough for me to just give you a lesson and say this is what you do. You need to be able to be in it and do it so that you know what's going to feel right for you. Then we come to week 4, and that's where we cover the D and the E. So we look at don't forget the birth partner and enhancing your emotions. And we have a checklist of how to be the most awesome birth partner you possibly can. And then we look at how we can nail feeling 100% confident and completely ready for birth. So this course runs for 4 weeks at the same day and time in each month, but different days in each month. And each session is about 2 to 2.5 hours, depending on how distracted we get with questions and discussions and that sort of thing. And it starts in the first week of each month and runs for 4 weeks. There are actually limited spaces to make sure that everyone gets a personalised, high quality experience. And the full price of the course is £99. But because you've already given me an hour of your time, I'd like to offer you access to the course for £74. That's £25 off, 25% off. And on top of this, I'm running a special promotion for September where you can get an extra £25 off the price. So it's just £49. And the bonus things you get alongside the live portion of the course is the a 41-page course manual and workbook. So everything you need to remember is written down for you, and there's exercises as well in the book and pictures and reminders of all the things that you need to learn. So you don't need to write anything down, but if you do want to write notes, then you've got somewhere to annotate the things that we're seeing. You also get free access to my online self-guided course, Breathing Techniques for Labour and Birth, which is worth $19.99. You also get a bonus module, Birth Preferences Masterclass, which is a video talking about birth preferences, how we can do it, why we should do it, the sort of things to consider, and that includes a free template to help you write your birth preferences. You can also get a free download of my book, Helping Birth, as an ebook PDF, if you want to have instant access for that. And you also get an invitation to join my VIP Facebook group. And in that group, we have unlimited question and answers. We have bonus live sessions, lots of extra content, extra articles, and of course, the support and advice of other people on the course who are all going through the same thing as you. So there's an extra bonus that the first 3 people who sign up to each course get a free 60-minute one-to-one or one-to-2, which is with you and your birth partner, antenatal or mindset coaching session to talk about any subject of your choosing and give you unique access to me for a very personalised session. To sign up to the course, just go to tiny.cc/uprightbirth. You can also find the course through my website, birthzang.co.uk, and use the code uprightbirth when you book the session. Now, I'm not going to send you this code in an email. You need to note that down right now, that the code is uprightbirth, and that will give you £50 off the course price. So it's just £49. And I've also got a guarantee that if after the first week of the course you have not enjoyed it and you don't already start feeling more confident and more ready for birth, then you can have your money back, no questions asked. And I've never had to give anybody back because every single person has completely loved the course, and we even within the first session are starting to feel more confident and more ready for birth. So to sign up, go to tiny.cc/uprightbirth or my website, birthzang.co.uk, and use the code uprightbirth. And make sure you write that code down now or take a screenshot, because I will not be sending this. It's only available to people who have given me an hour of their time and watched this video. So finally, just to let you know that all of the sessions are recorded. And so if you miss a session, or if you want a reminder of what's happened and practice again, you can watch the replay as many times as you want. And you can also come to any future courses. So you could do the course 2 times or 3 times if you really enjoy it. You're completely free to do that. So how do you know if this is the right course for you? Well, do you think that doing an antenatal course is a good idea? Then this is the course for you. Do you find that the biology and the mechanics of the body really useful and interesting? Then this is definitely the course for you. And I go into a lot more detail on that side than most other courses, because I believe so strongly it's a really important component of the learning. Do you want to understand why things work as well as how? Then this is the course for you, because I think that's an integral part of the learning process. And if you don't understand why, then you cannot learn it as well. Do you also want to learn as much as you can to give yourself the best chance to have an awesome birth? Well, then this is the course for you. I can't guarantee that you'll have an awesome birth, but I can guarantee that you can give yourself the best chance to achieve it. And are you ready to smash all the misinformation that TV and media have been feeding you, and instead fill your brain with the skills and the knowledge that you need to feel 100% confident and completely ready for birth? Well, this is also the course for you. If you're still on the fence, I am available to answer any questions that you might have. You can email me, eleanor@birthsang.co.uk. You can find me and message me through my Facebook page. You can also message me or WhatsApp me. My phone number is liberally spread around the internet. If you have any questions about your pregnancy, about your labour and birth, anything that we've covered today in the class, or anything about my course, Get Ready for Birth, please feel free to get in touch and I will answer your question as soon as I can and give you the support that you need. So don't forget that the first 3 people to sign up in each course get a free one-to-one coaching session, and the code that you need to use is Upright Birth, all one word, and that will get you the course for half price. But this code is only valid up to and including the end of this month. So let's just have a look and see how easy it is to sign up to the course. We can see here that if you look on your phone and you go to that link, it will take you to this page, and you just click on that green button at the top to enter your voucher code. Remember, it is Upright Birth to enter the code, and then you can scroll down and choose the date that you want, and then that will enable you to choose the course you want at that discounted price of £49. So just wanted to share with you some of the other comments that people have said about the course. Sarah said, we absolutely loved Birthsang antenatal classes. As first-time parents, the course really gave us insight into what to expect from the labour and birth. My husband was able to get involved, which he enjoyed, as birth partners tend to be forgotten about, not in my course. Although we were both quite nervous, we've come away after the course feeling more calm and more confident. And this course has really prepared us for what's ahead. Thank you, Eleanor. No, thank you, Sarah. You're really welcome. Laurie has said, my husband and I took part in Eleanor's online 4-week antenatal classes and they were fab. We enjoyed every single one and learned everything we needed about labour, birth, and how my husband could feel more involved. Eleanor is so knowledgeable and explained everything in an easy to understand way with diagrams and visuals too. We feel we've now gained the confidence to go into our birth knowing that we can be excited and prepared rather than nervous. We highly recommend this course to anyone who wants to gain more knowledge and gain a better understanding of all the elements that go into a positive birth experience. So I really hope this session has been useful, and that learning all about how to make informed choices in labour and birth, when you learn everything you know that you need to learn in labour and birth, and you understand the labour ABCDEs, and that you've seen and experienced seeing how the baby moves down the pelvis, and the single most important thing that we can do to help that process be in an upright position has helped you to feel more confident and more ready for birth. And if you're ready to feel 100% confident and completely ready for birth, then just go to tiny.cc/uprightbirth and use the code UprightBirth and book on to the next course. I'll see you then. Bye.